There is something that I have lived with for years of my life, and it is not a friend. It is a voice in my head. It is a feeling that I honestly can't quite shake. No matter how hard I try, this feeling always comes back. This voice always comes back, and it does not make me feel good. I'm not talking about joy. I'm not talking about anger. I'm not talking about sadness. I'm not talking about hunger. I'm talking about anxiety. I am just going to start us off and share with you my experience about anxiety. Because for me, anxiety has taken many different shapes and forms over the, you know, entirety of my life. I have felt anxiety since a very young age. I think, you know, anxiety just started younger for me than some other people, which is okay. However, I do think that I still have troubles with my anxiety even now, even though I've had, 25 years of experience almost with this feeling. I still haven't quite mastered it, but I've definitely gotten a lot better at coping with it. And for me, anxiety started probably when I was 2 years old. My parents got divorced when I was 2 years old, and obviously they separated. And for me, I needed to have my Minnie Mouse stuffed animal or Mickey Mouse. I don't remember which one it was, but I needed to have the stuffed animal with me whenever I switched houses. Like if I was at my mom's and I was going to my dad's and I didn't have my Minnie Mouse, boy, were they in trouble. Had to go back, had to get it, and vice versa. I needed it at my mom's too. I needed to have that constant thing with me at all times in order to help me feel secure as a kid. So that's the first time that I think anxiety really kind of showed itself in my life. That's number one. Next thing, the next time that I really remembered having anxiety at like a very, like not a very young age, but a young age was when I was 6 years old. This was a period of time in my life that was a little bit more turbulent than other periods of my life. I was dealing with some emotions that I just didn't quite know how to handle, and anxiety was like top notch. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what this feeling was because I knew it wasn't sadness, because I didn't always want to cry, and I knew it wasn't anger, but I just felt like this high level of overwhelm in myself and in my life. And for me, anxiety when I was 6 years old, unfortunately, looked like plucking out all of my eyelashes and my eyebrows. I just went to town. I just went to the mirror and I was like, okay, I'm plucking all of you out. Which is weird. That's an interesting way of going about it when you're a kid, but I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know any better. I was 6 years old. I was 6 years old. So my mom, one day, she notices after I've plucked out about 75% of my eyelashes that I don't have any eyelashes when I'm with her at her house. And I think that's when my parents started to notice in me that, okay, maybe something's going on with her. We don't really know. And my anxiety at school, I would like run out of class because I would just get so overwhelmed with anxiety. I would have to go cry like outside of class. Like it was something in my life that I dealt with a lot, that I didn't really see other kids dealing with as much as I was. And it made me feel weird. It made me feel like no one else quite understood me. And this isn't to say that anxiety was like really overpowering my life all of the time. I was a happy kid. However, I was also an anxious kid, especially when things in my life were turbulent. I just, anxiety happened because guess what? Things are changing. Life is changing, and I'm just a child and I'm just trying to figure it all out. And of course, I have anxiety. However, that's kind of like my early sort of relationship with anxiety. By the time that I turn, gosh, I want to say maybe 9 years old, 10 years old, I started to have these moments of just pure panic. And I already kind of was dabbling. I was already dabbling with panic attacks when I was younger. However, there was a period of my life where I was having these moments of just sheer panic, hyperventilation, just like everything. If you've ever had a panic attack, you understand, but just major, major anxiety that I could not get a grip on. I couldn't. It would happen to me during the day. It would really happen to me. Like I would have like dreams and I wouldn't even remember all of the dreams, but I would just like wake up and like lurch out and have these panic attacks when I'm alone in my room. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't go get my parents. I was just like, okay, this happened. I don't want to move because I'm scared that if I move, something else will happen. And that was interesting. That was probably until I was like 12 or 13 years old. And at the time when I was 11, I remember I looked up online when, you're able to go online and you figure out like, okay, like, why do I feel this way? And I learned about anxiety or I guess panic attacks and all of those things. And I learned about therapy. And I believe, and mom and dad, you could correct me if I'm wrong, that I went to my parents asking if I could go to therapy because I needed help with these things. I needed help because I could not, I couldn't do it anymore. I thought I needed medication. They put me on birth control thinking that like that would help my anxiety. It didn't. Um, and I just needed help. That was like my whole childhood was just like having these bouts of like crazy anxiety. I still felt it when it was like the happy times, but it wasn't as prevalent as when it was like the more turbulent times in my childhood. And things definitely changed a lot in my childhood. However, like all the time. However, I kind of got a better grip on it. I started going to therapy. Therapy really helped me as a kid, like so much. Anxiety really took a toll on me and it's made me so much of a people pleaser, and it's made me like really dial down like my own emotions for the sake of other people's emotions, because my anxiety and shame kind of tell me your emotions don't matter as much as other people's. So that's something. But anxiety, when I got into my teenage years, really kind of went inwards. And I started realizing that the way that people perceived me, how I looked, what I did, all of these things, social media, blah, blah, blah. Anxiety really became about how I looked and how I was perceived by other people. Like if I was likable, if I was pretty, blah, 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 whatever. And that had its grip on me for quite some time. That was definitely the center of like what this theme of anxiety was for me. It was really centered about how people perceived me as well as how I looked. Huge, huge chunk of my life, chunk of my time. And then I think, I don't know, like a couple of years ago, I really started getting anxiety about the dynamics in my life. If people loved me, if people were going to leave, if people cared, if I could trust people. Like it really turned, like when I realized that I was being unhealthy about like my looks and everything because of my anxieties and like wanting to control, it then went to my relationships because I realized focusing on my anxiety on my appearance, that's not working for me anymore. Now my anxiety started focusing on my relationships and just sort of if people liked me, if people loved me, if they were going to stay, everything that I just said like a moment ago. I still am sort of in that phase of life right now where I am on like the tail end of like really understanding my anxiety and being able to healthily cope with my anxiety. I am at like this moment in my life right now where I see all of my anxiety. When I have anxiety, I know exactly why I'm feeling it. I know exactly how I can help myself in those moments. And I know that it is a feeling that I have to ride in order for it to go away. Like I have to ride the wave of anxiety. I can't just stop it in its tracks. It's going to happen no matter what. It's just about how I deal with the anxiety that does happen in my life, like right now. I've really been trying to get better at how I cope with my anxiety because for me right now, my anxieties are really like focused on my relationships in my life and wanting to show up as a good daughter, a good friend, a good girlfriend, and just wanting to be the best version of myself for everyone. However, I am a human and humans make mistakes. Sometimes I don't do things the best. Sometimes I hurt people because guess what? I'm a human. But the amount of guilt and anxiety that I feel after that, the amount of shame that I feel after I made a mistake or I kind of hurt someone's feelings or I let someone down a little bit is extremely disproportionate. And I'm just having like this whole total like meta moment right now. And I'm also back in therapy, so that's good. But I'm just having this moment right now where I just realize that my anxiety, my shame, and my observation of these things in my life, this is something that I think that I've kind of quote, I haven't mastered it, but I do feel as though I'm becoming better at it. And I want to share it with you all today, sort of like why anxiety happens, why shame happens, and how you can observe your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors with a loving view and just sort of be able to differ yourself, the person that is living your experience of this anxiety, of this shame, of this whatever you're feeling, and how you can observe those things, but take a step back and be the observer of your life and your thoughts and how you basically like differentiate yourself from those things when you take a step back and you see the problem rather than seeing this thing that you are experiencing as yourself. You're like externalizing it is so, so, so helpful. And it is something that honestly has really, 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 really changed the game for me. I cannot emphasize it enough, hence all the reallys that I just said. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with this podcast episode today. And I just wanted to share with you guys, like, sort of how anxiety has changed and morphed over time, because anxiety is such a constant in my life. And I know for a fact that it is a constant in other people's lives as well, because anxiety is a feeling that we all feel. Some people feel it more than other people. I happen to be one of those people who feel it more than other people. I've gotten better at my anxiety. I've gotten better at coping with it. However, I am not perfect. So everything I say today, take with a grain of salt. I have a degree in psychology and a minor in counseling and social change. However, I am not a professional. I am just a girl who has lived and who has learned. So yeah, I guess let's sort of move on and talk about why anxiety happens. I want you to think of anxiety as a voice in your head as we move through this podcast. I don't want you to think of anxiety as a feeling. I want you to think of anxiety as like you have your mind, and anxiety is a voice that is like a speaker system in your mind telling you how you should think, telling you how you should feel. You have your mind, but you have this external speaker trying to talk to you and make you feel whatever anxiety wants to make you feel like. Picture that as we talk about anxiety today. Same thing as shame, because we're going to get into that later. When we think of anxiety, it is a voice, like I said, and you have to think about where this voice begins in your life. Maybe it's in childhood. Maybe it's in your teenage years. Maybe, you had someone in your life who was constantly nagging on you, constantly telling you all of the ways that you needed to be better, all of the ways that you didn't amount to, people's expectations of you. Maybe it was a classmate, maybe it was a parent, maybe it was, a coach for a team, maybe it was a sibling that just honestly was not that kind. There's a lot of ways that this voice kind of starts in our mind, and it starts by conditioning. It starts by external voices from that speaker system of anxiety being channeled into your mind. Trauma, perfectionism, rejection, all of these things work together with that conditioning to sort of tell you that what you are doing in your life is not enough and something is going to go wrong in the future because of it, because of this feeling that this speaker is trying to give you. Anxiety is not the truth. Some other ways that anxiety can also become loud in our minds are through cultural expectations, social comparisons, and survival mechanisms. When you are out in the world or in your family, whatever it is, you're going to have these sorts of experiences where you socially compare yourself to other people within your family, within your class, within the world, on social media. Those things are going to happen. Also, cultural expectations being placed upon you of what is expected of you and feeling as though you are not amounting up to it. That's another way that anxiety becomes very loud in your mind. And same thing about survival mechanisms. If you have gone through trauma or abuse, these things can really come up in your body. Survival mechanisms make it so that we are constantly on alert, constantly trying to look for the ways that something can go wrong, constantly trying to see if there's anything that we need to do in order to be safe in our bodies and in our environment. Those are all some of the ways that anxiety can really be loud in your head. And I just want to point that out before we move on. Hopefully I didn't miss anything, but I just got to tell you how it can become loud. I kind of mentioned shame earlier. If you're someone who relates to this feeling of shame, and you probably are, I'm laughing because it hurts. If you notice this on the podcast, I laugh because things hurt. That's the only reason why I laugh about certain things. But when you combine this idea of shame and anxiety in your mind and how loud these things can be in your mind, what they tell you is wrong with you, it hurts because these voices work together in conjunction to basically tell you, if I criticize myself, then no one else will. If I expect the worst, then maybe I won't be disappointed. These are the lies that shame and anxiety tell us in conjunction together in our minds. This is not reality. This is what shame and anxiety are trying to tell us in our minds to make us try to do things to protect our body and our emotions and our mind. These voices are not reality. These sentences are not the truth, but they often come when we don't feel as though we are safe, or we don't feel as though we're seen, or we don't feel as though we're loved. These things kind of infiltrate our mind into thinking in very negative and hurtful ways, because maybe if we hurt ourselves first, then no one else can hurt us. That is the lie of anxiety and shame. The way that your brain works in response to these things infiltrating it is not a weakness. It's just a memory. It's something that you learned long ago, either from someone else or you internalized it yourself, however it happened. You wanted to protect yourself, you wanted to keep yourself safe, and this is just how it is showing up. These voices are not random. They speak in patterns. Anxiety says, you are not safe. Shame says, you are wrong. Whenever you are having these negative thoughts in your mind, and it comes down to these feelings of, I feel as though I am wrong, point that out to yourself and say, that is shame talking. When you are having anxiety and you feel as though you're not safe, point that out and say, that is anxiety talking to me. Those thoughts are not my own right now. It's anxiety talking to me. Behind both of these voices is a deep desire to feel protected. And you don't feel protected. So how can you protect yourself from these voices, from these feelings within yourself? That is hopefully what we can get through today. Anxiety and shame are technically a protection function that we have in our minds. It is telling us what we need to do in order to be safe within our group, our community, our circle. This is something that is hardwired into our monkey brains that we just can't seem to let go of. But when you see this as a protection function, you are then able to see that this is a way that I just learned how to cope with these feelings, with these rejections, with these moments where I am scared of what the next moment is going to be like. I don't know if I'm wrong. I don't know if I'm safe here. That is what these voices are trying to tell you. They're trying to help you cope with these things. They are trying to protect you. But now, shame and anxiety are telling you that you are small and hidden and afraid, and that there is nothing that you can do in order to fix it. And that feeling sucks. It really does. Sometimes the voice is just a younger version of yourself that is still scared and still wanting for someone to come in and tell them that they're okay, that they don't have to be afraid anymore. And that is when the voice of validation comes in. The voice that tells us that everything is fine, that we don't need to worry about anything, and that we are safe, okay, seen, and loved. That is the voice that you have to make louder in your mind rather than shame and anxiety. You have to give yourself validation in these moments. And that is something that can be a lot easier said than done. Validation is something that oftentimes, most of the time, we get externally rather than internally. And internal validation is really aligned with confidence. So as we move through this, I want you to think about, okay, internal validation, confidence, anxiety, shame. What do these things all look like in my life right now? And maybe you make these parts of yourself, your anxiety, your shame, your internal validation, your external validation, maybe, and your confidence, maybe you make them into people, maybe you make them into characters, and you try to see where they fit in your life, what they look like, what they feel like, what they sound like. Explore these parts of yourself and really become familiar with them. Understand how these voices come into your life right now, and also think about how they've come into your life in the past. Maybe the voice of anxiety telling you that you are not safe is one of your parents telling you that you don't have a future ahead of yourself. Maybe shame is something along the lines of someone in high school who bullied you, who made you feel as though you were ugly and that no one liked you. Maybe inner validation for yourself is a teacher who really took a liking to you and wanted to support you in your life. Maybe confidence is when were a kid and you made dances with friends and you felt like a little pop star, rock star, whatever it was. I came up with different versions, but every single person in your life has come in and they've either been a voice of anxiety, shame, validation, or confidence. You can go back in your life and sort of see how these voices, these things have come up into your current life in order for you to understand why it hurts so bad. Maybe it's none of those examples that I gave. Those were just examples. They don't pertain to me. However, maybe they pertain to you. And I don't even know if I'm using the word pertain right, but that's okay because I'm just talking. I'm just trying to help. And maybe what I'm saying hits. I don't know. When you are able to externalize these voices and really see them as separate entities from yourself that are just trying to infiltrate your mind like a speaker. Hopefully you guys know exactly like what like speaker I'm thinking of, because I'm thinking of myself like in a classroom. I'm sitting in the classroom, I'm the only person in the classroom. And I have a desk. It's the center of the room. I'm sitting in my chair, and on the loudspeaker is just a voice coming in to my mind, and I'm just sitting there listening to it. It's kind of how I imagine these things. And whatever voice comes out on the loudspeaker, I know exactly what it sounds like. I know when it's anxiety. I know when it's shame. I know when it's confidence. I know when it's validation. I know when it's all of the different things that I'm feeling when I'm having these thoughts. When you separate yourself from anxiety and shame, you realize that you are not the voice. You are just the one who is listening. And you can choose to listen and to let that voice be truth, or you could choose to ignore it, or you could choose to listen and to basically just tell them that they're wrong. And I wanted to use a different type of language, but I don't want to do that. The point is, you are not shame. You are not anxiety. These things are not truth. And you need to figure out how you want to have a relationship with these voices. And when you separate yourself from them, you're able to see them as outside of yourself. You can then choose what you want to do with them. This episode is all about learning how to observe rather than to absorb these feelings of shame and anxiety, because they can really feel like they are just permeating into our skin, into our body, into our soul and our minds, and that we can't get away from it because we just feel like a sponge who's just soaked up in all of this anxiety and shame. That is most certainly how I have felt at points in my life. However, that is not true. It's just not. These things are just voices that you need to observe rather than absorb. So as I said earlier, name the voice that is talking. When you are having a moment of anxiety or shame, name it. Say, this is anxiety talking. This is fear talking. This is shame talking. And when you are able to say that to yourself in a moment, and trust me, it takes some practice. Like when you are having anxiety, like you could just get so lost in it that you forget that you're actually just anxious and that you need to take a step back and that you need to say, hey, this is anxiety right now. What do I do now that I have named it, that I have pointed it out to myself? And this next step is very important. It is probably the most important, other than naming it. It is, what are you going to do with it now? Now that you have named this thing, now that you have named, oh, I am feeling anxiety right now, what are you going to do? For me, what I have realized is that I have to figure out, is the reason why I am having anxiety true? Because for me, I feel a disproportionate amount of anxiety and guilt and shame for situations when I should feel guilty about saying something wrong. And that's like notch level 3 on like a scale of like 1 to 10. Like it should be dialed at 3, my anxiety. For me, my 3 feels like an 8 because it's just disproportionate. It's not accurate. If I mess up something that I said or how I reacted to something, I do not feel it proportionately to the thing that I did. However, when I am having a moment, I go, oh, I'm having anxiety. I'm feeling guilty. I have shame. Okay, let me go and let me write down 10 things that I know are true about the situation that I am in right now. And I say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I am feeling anxiety because this. The situation is this. This person, loves me and I love this person. And I know that I try my hardest to be a good friend. It could be bullet point answers. It could be paragraph answers. I personally think that you should handwrite it out. However, if you don't have time, if you're in a pinch, just type it on your phone, type it on your computer, whatever you need to do. Write down 10 reasons about this thing, this situation, how you are feeling that you know to be true. Write about what happened. Write about how you're feeling. Write about the past. Write about the future. Write about the reality of the situation and things that you know to be true. It can even be a random fact. I don't even know. Just write down 10 things to be true to ground yourself in the moment and ground yourself in the situation. And then once you're done writing all of those 10 things, trust me, it takes like 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes like 15. But once you write all of those things down, go back and read them over. And you will be able to track how your thought process, I can't talk anymore. It's been a while. I've been talking for a long time, but you could see how your thought process changed from the time that you wrote fact number 1 to the time that you wrote fact number 10. And I promise you, by the time that you write 1 through 10, by the time that you get to 10, you will feel a lot better about it. I'm not going to say it'll be gone, but sometimes it is for me. Sometimes I go and I write these 10 things down and by the end of it, it's gone. And I'm like, oh, I didn't need to have that bad of anxiety anyways. Oh, my shame was very disproportionate. My guilt, whatever your anxiety is telling you to feel like, once you go through all 10 of those things that you know to be true, you will feel 10 times better by the time that you get to the end of writing those things down. And then go through it, think about it, and just observe, okay, wow, like I thought this at the beginning and now that I'm towards the end, I think this and I feel this way. And I gave myself some time to breathe, to assess, to really think about the situation, to think about how I feel, to think about the other people involved. It just helps you really navigate your mind and your feeling and the voices that are in your head. I could not recommend it enough. That's why I'm telling you about it in this podcast episode. When you go through this exercise of naming 10 things that you know to be true, you are grounding yourself in the present moment. You are grounding yourself in the reality of your life and the reality of the situation at hand. And you are basically telling yourself that I'm okay. I know what is true. I know what's to come. I know what has been, and I'm fine. The situation is fine. Now, what you do next after it is you allow yourself to take care of yourself. Because what you are needing, what this voice is telling you is that you are not safe. You are not safe. And you, by writing this list of 10 things down, are telling yourself basically the 10 reasons why you are safe. The 10 things that you know to be true. The 10 reasons why the situation is okay. And maybe after you write down the 10 things, You still don't feel safe. You don't feel okay. This is when this next step is really important. Now, you need to look at those things. You need to look at yourself. You need to feel in this moment. Now that you are grounded and you have a lot more clarity, what do I need from myself right now to make me feel okay? To make me feel as though I am protected, that I am seen, that I am loved, that I am okay. To be honest, what do you need? Is it a walk? Is it a snack? Is it some water? Is it a sweet treat? But what do you need to do right now in order to make yourself feel secure and safe and seen and heard and loved? What do you need to do? Personally, for me, I think that whatever you do to make yourself feel safe needs to be something that pertains to you and only you, because you need to be on your side right now. So I think you should go on a walk. I think that you should do something nice for yourself, self-care, like maybe paint your nails, or I don't even know. Paint your nails, face mask, take a shower. Taking a shower is actually very, very cleansing. It like really rids your energy. You just feel rejuvenated after you step out of a shower. Maybe you take a shower. Maybe you're a little stinky right now. I don't know. But anxiety kind of makes you sweat. So maybe take a shower. Go outside, meditate, stretch, do something good for your body, for your mind before you go and you call someone else. Like, I would really keep it to yourself, because these feelings of anxiety, we can often go to other people because we're wanting that voice of validation that we can't quite give ourselves. So if you go through that whole list and you're still not feeling good, is calling another person who the best thing to do? No, because you're still looking for that voice of validation. So you have to take care of yourself. You have to do something to make you feel safe. And then you got to circle back, and maybe you do the 10 things I know to be true again. And you do it until you feel as though you are secure and that you have that voice of internal validation. You have that confidence to assess the situation. I'm like, if you're watching the video, I'm like doing something with my hands to show the voice. But you have to get yourself to a point where you feel secure, grounded, and safe in order to move on from the anxiety. And maybe you go through the list of 10 things I know to be true 10 times before you feel okay. That's also okay. Because sometimes things are so anxiety inducing and just so horrible and terrible that we have to really spend a lot of time being intentional trying to ground ourselves. You need to give yourself the time to ground yourself. It's very important. Gotta separate these voices. You gotta take a moment to be with yourself, look inwards, be grounded, and then you got to take care of yourself. It's like really at the heart of like this whole, how do we cope with shame, anxiety, and how do we observe? It's just about knowing what you need. You need to parent yourself. Now that, you're whatever age you are, you need to learn, okay, how do I cope with this? And hopefully going through the 10 things and doing something nice for yourself afterwards is enough. Maybe you got to do it over and over again. I don't know. But dealing with anxiety and shame is something that takes a very long time for you to really nail down. And as I said earlier, I am no expert. I am no master. I am an amateur. However, I've found some tools and things along the way that have really helped me. And I've really become familiar with my anxiety. I know when I'm having anxiety. I know why I have anxiety. I know that when I'm feeling anxiety, it's not right that I do it, but I can't help myself sometimes. However, I need to help myself. And that's what you need to do as well. You just need to help yourself when you're in those moments, because that voice can be so loud and so suffocating and so overwhelming. But you deserve to be calm, to feel safe, to feel protected by yourself. It's what you deserve. That's what we all deserve at the end of the day. It's just to feel loved, safe, cherished, known, seen, adored, and like we're a whole human being. That's like what we all deserve. But yeah, I hope today that me rambling on about my anxiety and talking about shame and anxiety and how to externalize everything and the advice I gave, I hope, like I really do hope that it makes you feel less alone, that it makes you feel like you can handle your anxieties, your fears, your guilt, because you are not alone. these feelings are so human and they're so valid. And it took me so long to realize that these voices that occur in my mind from time to time, they are just trying to help me. But it's just not a good way of doing it. So, I don't know. I just hope that today gave you a little bit of peace of mind. I don't really know if it did. Hopefully it did. Please let me know. With all of that being said, I hope to talk with you again on To Be Known. All right. Stay true to you. Bye.